There we go. Now, can we still see me? We can still see. Okay, good. All right. So the students will be coming up and they'll be unmasking when they come up. They are masked in the classroom. And we're going to be talking about what we have. So we interviewed quite a few people for our project, and we got quite a few people from our community to help us out with this. And the way it started was I pick a project every year about some local history. And this year the students chose the ice storm because they'd heard a lot about it. And none of us, including me, were here during that time. So it was all new information to us as far as some of the things that we discovered. And it's something that we didn't experience, but everybody talks about still, 22 years later, 23. So without much further ado, I'm going to be inviting Sam up first, and then the students will be cycling through and they'll be presenting from here. So Sam, come on up. And I'm going to show you what you're going to do to get yourself through your slides. That's okay. All right, so Sam, you're going to ask that in a second, but when to move yourself to the next slide, so you're going to hit that button, okay? Okay.
Can I move the speech or the screen? Or take it away?
Just hit this arrow.
No, like this thing.
Oh.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
So for when the storm began, a low pressure and a high pressure current, warm and cold current, collided with one another, and then the warm air rose above the cold. And as it was raining, the precipitation began to freeze as it was settling to the earth. And then this is a picture of a satellite image and surface weather map of the storm. And now the slides are on screen.
Okay. There.
So there was a different amount of precipitation accumulation in different areas of the US. In Vermont, there was up to 2 inches, and it really only affected the very northern section of the state. In Maine, there was a very small amount in most areas, but in central Maine, there was up to 1.5 inches. In northern New York, there was more than 3 inches in some areas, and the closest you were to the border to Canada, the more precipitation there was. In New Hampshire, there was a little over 1.5 inches in the very small northern section of the state. Canada was impacted a lot by the storm. There was very little to over 3 inches of precipitation. And in this map, you can see that areas in southern Canada and Canadian provinces to the east were affected by the storm. A lot of places needed help and received it from many different people. In New York, there are 1,500 National Guard troops and rescue workers. They supplied food, water, generators, and etc. to those in need. In Maine, there were 3,000 out-of-state utility workers and more than 1,200 National Guard troops. The out-of-state utility workers fixed and restored power, while the National Guard troops cleared limbs from roads and distributed water and other items to people. And then in Canada, there was 16,000 soldiers. They helped clear the roads, rescue people and animals, evacuate the sick, and that was the largest deployment since the Korean War of the Canadian soldiers.
Go ahead and switch.
Oh, this looks weird. Okay, so volunteer helpers. Some people would go around to help others without being told to. And to the right, that's a picture of a caravan of trucks and cars leaving for Plattsburgh to deliver needed firewood to residents of Iberville and St. Athanase, Quebec. I believe it's Lily's.
Hey, Lily? Okay.
So, Claudine Steenberg said that everyone pitched in and helped others where they could, and it showed her that they were a strong community and they needed to pull together.
Sam? Okay, so periodically the students are going to be coming back and forth, and this was much smoother when we didn't have tech issues, so I apologize for the tech issues. And some of them are still having tech issues. So if it looks like we're kind of playing tag, we kind of are. Okay, so who is next for the interview? Nate.
There was an interview with a firefighter that we did, and the firemen helped out with the ice storm. So there was like a available manpower asked to man their respective fire stations. There were first calls, welfare checks, people trying to check up on a family. National Guard soldiers arrived in Malone, set up based in the Malone Middle School. They had large vehicles to check on each house. People living in town were more prepared with generators and wood stoves, etc. Resupplying ambulances wasn't an issue, and there were plenty of supplies. There was a quote by Ron Martin, and he said, "That was a crazy storm. I spent a lot of time at." Whoops, that's the wrong one, I think. No. Never mind, it's the right one. There's a quote by Ron Martin that says, "That was a crazy storm. I spent a lot of time at the fire station going on calls, frustrated people. I remember we had to break out the chainsaws and cleared roads to get where we needed to."
All right, Patty. Hey, good. I'm glad that you're okay back there. You know where we are. Because poor Lily does.
Wait, which one's the one with the camera? Oh, I don't know.
Mine's wrong.
Okay, so Malone itself, and just Malone, there was linemen as far as the Carolinas. They came to help replacing the 593 utility poles that went down in just Franklin County. Although power in urban areas, like in the towns and cities and villages, it was restored within a few days. Power restoration in rural areas took much longer. There were still 700,000 people without power 3 weeks after the storm. There's about 4.7 million people in Canada and another 500,000 people in the United States that lost power. How do I go to the next one?
If the arrow doesn't work, then.
Yeah, so
Okay. So who's reading Charmaine? You can read it from there, start the screen.
One of the other quotes we had was by Charmaine Gladfelter, and she said, "We had coolers outside in the snow and ice keeping our perishables from spoiling for 11 days. And the picture on the screen shows, I believe, a tree limb through a camp, possibly. That's what we're thinking. And it's very strange just seeing the limb just protrude through the house.
there were 130 transmission towers that were destroyed and 30,000 utility poles fell. The National Guard came and canvassed neighborhoods just to make sure everyone was safe and uninjured. In addition, they also helped with assisting the linemen in restoring power and clearing the down lines. Due to the severe damages of the storm, there was 1,400 crews from all over, totaling 4,000 men. With many families without electricity, their homes became unsafe to stay in. One of the places that they went was Maxi Hall. It's an athletic building at the local college. It became home for many stranded families in Potsdam. They also housed linemen who came from all over to help repair those damaged utility poles. Another even local place is the Holy Family School. It housed local families without power. Community members helped each other by providing meals and other necessities. The picture in the lower left-hand corner, you can see a volleyball net that was completely destroyed under the weight of the ice.
Go back. Where is it?
No,
Oh, right there.
you got it. Okay.
I wanted to point out in this picture of the volleyball net, those 4x4 posts broke, and 4x4s are pretty thick. So you can imagine how much ice there was. Oh yeah. The storm caused roads to be shut down and every trip out of the house to be treacherous. Roads and highways closed until assault trucks could get to them. The people of the Champlain Valley had a real problem on their hand. Off to the left, you can notice that there's a tree in the middle of the road. Obviously not going to get much done with that. And in the bottom, you can see there's a lot of ice, some trees. And the rain did not stop, causing tree branches to freeze along with power lines and especially roads. Inches of ice were built up on everything from cars to branches and sidewalks. Around 1,500 National Guard troops were sent to the Champlain Valley to bring supplies such as generators, plows, food, and water. $800,000. This is what one insurance company paid out on claims. An interview with Mark Tim Lasham of Lasham Insurance. He said there was around 300 to 400 claims. Out of all his insurance policies, 75% had a claim. 95% of the damage was to trees, or 95% of the damage was to houses, apartment buildings, and commercial buildings. There wasn't a whole lot of car damage except the cars that trees fell on. My grandpa Mark Tim Lasham said his agency gave out over $800,000 between generators and damages done. Insurance paid for food and shelter. He said he remembers his neighbor's house froze up and had pounds of icicles in his house. He remembers that being a $100,000 claim. And neat.
Getting smoother, guys. Getting smoother.
There's an economic impact, obviously, in Quebec, Canada. Some milk processing plants were shut down because of the storm, and about 10 million liters or 2.6 million liquid gallons of milk were actually dumped and wasted. Maple syrup producers were permanently impacted, and it was estimated that it would take about 30 to 40 years before maple syrup production could be normal again. In the US and Canada, many businesses, like big and small, affected many lives. Some places were destroyed by the ice storm, especially once the high demand items were bought. After those items were bought, then they had nothing else really to sell. Certain items were in high demand, like generators, rock salt, propane, lamp oil, batteries, kerosene heaters, and propane heaters. Then there were a lot of price gouges, and the best way for businesses to really make money was to raise the prices that they had in the store for the items, and they didn't really know how long the store would last, so they were just taking precautions. Some companies, for example, sold 5,000 watt generators for $1,300 when they were normally sold for like $600. And they also sold 7,000 watt generators for $2,200 when they would have only been sold for $1,400. And some companies did end up paying civil penalties for price gouging up to around $3,500.
So, weather conditions cause pregnant women to become more stressed. A study was conducted in Canada on the baby's health after they were born, and it showed that 36 babies out of 100 families had a mutation within the T cells. The mutation can lead to a lot of health problems like asthma, diabetes, anxiety, or obesity. And one of the cases actually came forward to a news agency, and she explained how she still has her anxiety and she is actually going to college to study more about it. Malone was gifted with generators for their hospital by the National Guard.
So another quote that we, oh, shoot. Another quote we had was Trevor, who said, "My grandson was born during the ice storm, wasn't allowed to bring him home until they had power."
Such psychiatric hotlines were set up due to people with PTSD and children having problems at night with sleeping. People with PTSD were getting more and more stressed out because of the isolation. Nathan Griffin and Roger Willingham said that they can still hear the trees snapping down in the middle of the night, just like shotguns going off like it was yesterday, and then it also sounded like an artillery firing range. In 1998, Malone Central School District was appointed a new superintendent, Wayne Walbridge. Mr. Walbridge had stated in an interview that he had previous experience with ice storms since he was the superintendent at Indian River during the ice storm of 1991. He said his previous experience helped him with making his first executive action as superintendent, which was to close the school down for 11 straight school days, even though the schools were closed, he still worked 12 to 14 hours meeting with the National Guard, American Red Cross, village and town of Malone, Franklin County, and village and state trooper officials. Sherry Finch, who was a teacher at the time at an elementary school, said as an elementary teacher, the kids just weren't ready emotionally to be back. Half of them still had no electricity. Many were ravings daily, and tears flowed freely.
Oh, hang on, I'll do it. Okay, I'm just popping in for another second here. So a couple of the people that we talked to actually came to us in person, one of them being Dave Werner, and he gave us a lot of information that came that we used directly with our utility information that Hattie provided, so thanks to him. But yesterday, Judge Main came and talked to our class, and he said that the courts were closed for 2 solid weeks because of many things, one of them being the power outage, the employees couldn't arrive to work, and he, instead of being at the court, was helping out the Farrar home and helping with the elderly who were, oh, sorry, I thought somebody was popping in speaking. Instead of being at court because courts were closed. So he did a lot of volunteer work that time. And I know that a lot of people pitched in like that too. And that's one of the things that we discovered when we did our presentation. Okay, so our next speaker is Trevor.
So there were some losses in the U.S. Altogether, there were 17 people that lost their lives. The first area that's kind of local was Clinton County. 3 people died in Clinton County from carbon monoxide poisoning. It was caused by improper ventilation when they had their generators running. Another place is Maine. 5 people died altogether. 2 died from carbon monoxide poisoning, while 2 others died from falling trees and collapsed roofs. And lastly, 1 died from hypothermia, which is a very familiar death caused by this storm. And the last, local place is Franklin County. From what I can find, there wasn't very much information on it. There was 1 death from carbon monoxide poisoning, while 2 others were from hyperthermia and a heart attack. And Canada also was affected. They lost a lot of people. Around 30 people had reportedly died. 9 died from trauma, 7 died from carbon monoxide poisoning, 5 died from house fires, 4 died from hypothermia, and 3 died from falling ice and snow. The picture above that shows like all the ice on the car just shows the amount that was on. That's like in Ontario. So yeah, just a lot of ice. Farm animals were also pretty affected. It was mostly farm animals. Areas affected was New York. In New York, farmers altogether lost about 12,000 cows. They died from a lack of water supply, improper ventilation, and just barns collapsing due to the way the ice. Canada was also affected with farm animals. Around 300,000 died, like farm animals. They didn't have the needed amount of generators for their farms, so most animals died from freezing to death. Um,
You're on. Yeah. Come on now. Johnny.
The National Guard helped farmers. The National Guard also brought generators from farm to farm so they could milk the cattle. That was by Daniel Brielt Dale Brielt. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, all right. Okay. This is the Ice Storm Century song. We're not playing it, but if you want to see it like another time or something, then yeah, we'll give you the link.
I'm gonna try and play it.
Yeah.
You might do it
All right.
next year.
Who's next? Karen.
Jordan.
This is a quote by my mom, Karen Ashley. She said it was a very scary time, especially when I had a baby to try to keep warm, feed, and get diapers for. Next one is Nate. Yeah. All right. So basically, these are ice cubes, and what do you get when you get ice cubes and trees together? Well, you get a tree with ice on it, and well, basically we got information from Dave Warner, and it said like some trees that were like there were evergreen trees that were like 50 feet tall and 20 feet wide actually had a lot of ice on it, and they had around 5 tons of ice on it. So that's pretty crazy. Let's see. Trevor. So what did we learn from the storm? Number 1, invest in generators. Power outages were a huge problem when the ice storm struck. CBC interviewed a family, and they said that they spent $10,000 on a generator to be more prepared. Number 2, improve emergency plans. Many of the plans before the ice storm were outdated. Officials suggest that we upgrade our plans and practice them at least once a year. Number 3, strengthen power lines and towers. Thousands of power poles and metal towers had collapsed due to the way the ice. Utility company in Quebec said that strengthening the structures won't stop power outages from ice storms, but will improve the rate of recovering electricity to families. Number 4, stock up on canned goods and medications. The ice storm had stopped a lot of people from doing their everyday activities, so like stuff like grocery shopping was halted. Canned goods and most medications have long expiration dates, so stocking up is a good decision if you're confined in your home for a long period of time. Conclusion. In conclusion, the ice storm was not fun for anyone. This storm ranged from upstate New York to northern parts of Canada. There were negative impacts that the storm caused, like power outages, isolation, and unfortunately, deaths. Many citizens came together during this time and helped each other survive. The National Guard was also called in, and other emergency services helped citizens through this difficult time as well.
All right, so We are going to open up for questions, but we wanted to thank a few people, and we have them on our page. One person that didn't make the page, and I know she's watching, so Jess, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Jess Collier, who has helped us put our word out and getting our project together. One of the things that we collected were several dozen photographs from local people that helped us out, and they submitted them, sent them to us in email. Some people brought them to us and we scanned them. So thank you for that. And we hope we aren't saying your names wrong. So Cindy and Peter Oshier, Kathleen Sauve, Dale Brialt, Alin Lewis Chartier, Dave Werner, which we apologize, Dave, that we spelled it wrong, but we know who you are. Karen Ashline, Mark Tim Lasham, Wayne Walbridge, Kenneth Joyle, Tina Hamill, Josh Harmson, and Andrea Dumas, who helped us blast it out on Facebook. So I'm going to open this up for questions, and the students should be able to answer you from their desks so they don't have to keep popping up like whack-a-moles. But while they're doing that, I'm going to run through some of the photos that were shared with us. So who out there in our audience has questions?
I just have one question.
Okay.
It appears that Canada had a much more severe outcome on it than the United States. From what you showed me.
Are you guys all muted? Okay. All right. So Canada, could you repeat the question again? We had to mute ourselves. So Canada had more of a severe, what was the rest of the question?
Well, it seems like they're more severe losses than the United States.
Yes. So I think that if I go all the way back, and I hope that hang on, it'll be faster if I go this way. If you look at the weather slide that Sam had at the beginning, you can, wait, maybe the next slide. Here, you can see in this slide, and hopefully you can follow my mouse, how we are right about here, right? That would be, yeah. So you can see how Canada had a much broader stretch, I suppose, and they had more, like Montreal especially, had up to 100 millimeters, and we figured that to be about, how many inches do we figure that to be? I think they said 5 or 6 inches of ice at some point, like in one, it's crazy amount of ice. So I don't know why Canada got hit harder than us necessarily, but Sam, could you, or either you or Lily, could you describe what we saw with Dave Werner's video that he brought for us? And you have to unmute for that. Remember the video of the metal poles? Yeah, go ahead, Mark. Come on up.
So, Mr. Warner, Dave Warner, showed us a video of Canada, and they had huge, like, losses. They had the huge power poles were destroyed. There's a lot of ice. Yeah, the really, like, massive metal poles were all destroyed. Yeah.
So, anyone else have? Okay, so let's get back to some of our photos. What other questions do we have?
I have less of a question, more of a comment, Miss Edwards, for the kids.
Ready? Can you guys hear Mr. McMahon?
You know, for me, I was a sophomore in high school, so kind of similar age range to what they've gone through with COVID, maybe a little bit, but just want them to think about how their COVID quarantine experience would have been without technology, because that's what we had to do. Just wanted to have them have a point of reference for that.
He said, imagine going through COVID quarantine, but without technology. So did you actually have to read a book or something? What did you do for entertainment?
There were words on paper. Yeah, they were bound together. It was a strange phenomenon. It was interesting.
Yes, we've heard a lot about families that played board games and played cards and
by candlelight. Yeah, it was, you know what? A lot of what I heard about the COVID quarantining stuff with regards to building that family sense and things like that. That was a lot of what I felt as a late teenager going through this ice storm. Certainly for a much more brief period of time, but yeah, that's all I had.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Mark's grandma hasn't asked a question yet. Oh, is that helping our volume? Okay. I'm trying to look at both screens to make sure I don't miss anybody. So do we have any other questions? Anything in the chat? Okay, well, that's our program. And we will be putting up a little slideshow on the BOCES Facebook page, possibly, of the pictures that people shared with us to go back to this project. So thank you all for attending. And I just wanted to introduce the students a little bit last minute. So we're going to go in order of alphabet. So Trevor, come on up and introduce yourself and tell what school you're from.
So I'm Trevor Ashline. I'm from Franklin Academy.
And where do you plan to go for after graduation?
I plan to go to North Country Community College, do my 2 years there, and see where that takes me. Possibly. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right.
I'm Mark Bilo. After high school, right now I'm between Syracuse and George Washington. My major is finance, and hopefully I can do something with that. And thanks for watching.
I'm Hattie Laughlin-Ullman. I'm from Salmon River. Probably going to go to Syracuse and study political science.
Which one do I look at?
Whichever one's fine.
Oh, okay. I'm Nate Martin. Going to the Air Force this summer. Oh yeah, I go to Franklin Academy. That's pretty cool. Are you?
Hi, my name is okay. Hi, my name's Lillian Wilberhill. I'm from Malone. I go to Franklin Academy. In the fall, I'll be going to SUNY Canton, where I'll be majoring in applied psychology.
Hey, Sam.
I'm Samantha Wells. I go to Brushton High School, and I plan to go to SUNY Canton to study psychology.
All right. That concludes our program. Yes, I'm Miss Edwards. Let's see. I've already been to college, and when I grow up, I want to be independently wealthy. I'm in the wrong career for that, though. So thank you all.
Thank
And we're
you.
cutting it off. Oh, Mark's going to come and say goodbye.
Bye, Grandpa.
Thanks, Mark.